Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. A big thank you to the speakers and the moderator of our first session. We are now starting with our second session of our STEM Day, Inclusive STEM and Tech for Good, here at the Women's Forum Global Meeting. And our focus for the next 40 minutes is on STEM skills and social mobility. STEM skills can contribute to social mobility and unlock positive societal impacts. Unfortunately, they aren't all accessible to all. Depending on our backgrounds and their backgrounds, students face many hurdles when it comes to pursuing careers in the STEM sector. So what can employers, governments, non-profits learn from women who have already made it from disadvantaged communities and into tech leadership? How can practice and policy boost representation and social mobility through STEM? So we have the great honor to welcome today Atti, who is co-chief executive officer of the African Visionary Fund, whose mission is to drive more funding to African visionaries to accelerate their impact. We have Cecile Bartenieff, Chief Operating Officer and Global Head of Technology and Operations from Société Générale, and Charlotte West, Executive Director, Global Corporate Communications, Lenovo. This session will be moderated by the exceptional, super smart Neveen Awad. Neveen Awad is Managing Director and Partner at Boston Consulting Group. She focuses on how digital data and technology can be used to enable business. Neveen is recognized for her IT change management know-how, for her ability to effectively lead and manage a wide variety of transformation. And Neveen leads, among others, the Women in Technology initiative in North America. Please don't hesitate to communicate about this session throughout social media using our hashtags, which are hashtag WFGM21 and hashtag Women for Inclusion. And if you have a question, please post them in the designated section on the right-hand side of our screen. Neveen, we are all ears and eager to know more about STEM skills and social mobility.
So excited to talk to all of you. And what I'm going to do is share elements that we learned from our research and then pause and get reactions from the very esteemed panel that we have. So, first of all, as probably many of you may know, there's a bit of a leaky pipeline in STEM, from those that study it and graduate with it to those that become leaders. So, for example, women make up about 36% of university graduates in STEM categories, yet they only make up 25% of the STEM workforce and only 9% of the STEM executive leadership. So clearly something happens from graduation to leadership. So I wanted to ask each of our panelists, starting with Cecile, to talk about their personal and professional journey in the top of technology roles. Cecile, can you start, please?
Yes, sure. Hi, everyone. So I'm Cecile Bartenieff. I'm actually CEO and Global Head of Technology and Operations for Société Générale Investment Banking and Global Banking. I started I graduated from an MBA in France as a business school, and then I started at Accenture. When I moved into a bank, did trading and sales, and when I joined Société Générale in the early 2000s, and there I have always been in various either managerial role or project management roles. In the finance, operations, capital market divisions, and then I took a very large role as a global head of operations in 2014, and now global CEO, global head of tech and operations since 2017, and I'm a member of SG Strategic Committee, as well as chair of AFME. And along my career, I've always been working very closely with technology or in technology. And I'm really happy to be here today because I think there is so much potential for women in this area, in this sector. And it's really sad that we do not see so many women yet in this sector. And I think it's good that we have the opportunity to talk about this issue and how we can move the needle, because experience has shown me that when you take care of the topic and when you really put objectives and you motivate people around that, you see progress, and pretty quickly. So
wonderful. I couldn't agree more. Atti, I'm wondering if you can go next. Actually, that's a great jumping off point to talk about both your career trajectory and your energy for women and girls in terms of their education and policy.
Thank you. I'm definitely unfortunately not surprised with the data that you shared with us earlier, because it permeates all forms of different other industries as well. How as we go up women, we see less and less women. My name is Atti Worku. I'm the co-CEO of the African Visionary Fund, as well as the founder and former CEO of Seed South Africa, which is an education and economic development organization that worked specifically in education, investing in girls and STEM education in Ethiopia. And my current role at the African Visionary Fund, we focus in providing unrestricted, unburdensome capital to African visionaries that are working in different industries, including in tech. And part of the reason that I'm really drawn to this work is because as we see this huge, the gap we see in technology, in terms of who has access to it or who is educated or who gets to work in technology or lead, is not only limiting women, but specifically when we get into people of color and women of color, it's even worse. We see even a lot less women who are in technology or get technology education or then get into leadership. So this is something that I'm really passionate about in our current, my current role at the African Visionary Fund. We've done a lot of work in investing in innovative solutions that are really bringing in people of color and women into the forefront of technology as well.
Excellent. And Charlotte, I think actually you'd be an interesting person now to talk about across both leveraging opportunities or leveraging all the education that have been given to women and creating opportunities for underserved populations. So would love to hear from you.
Thank you, Neveen and Atti and Cecile. So I'm not here in a capacity as my day-to-day job, which is heading up global corporate communications for Lenovo. We're a big technology powerhouse operating in 180 markets around the world. I'd like to think some of the people watching today are watching through one of our devices, a ThinkPad. If so, thank you. But I'm here more in my capacity, as you said, Neveen, in terms of the work we do with the Lenovo Foundation, of which I'm a director. So it's our philanthropic giving arm. And I think true to who we are as a company, our focus is on STEM and really about how we impact 15 million lives between now and 2025 and how we really transform 1 million of those lives really significantly. So the focus and the mission has always been around technology and education, and I think in particular around women and the opportunities for them and the failures that there are sort of systemically for all of us at every level, regardless of our backgrounds, but certainly more pronounced in some, that's for sure, as Atti spoke to. So I think, the last 18 months in particular have really reinforced what was once a digital divide is now like a digital chasm. It's huge in the way technology has democratized so much for all of us over the past few years, but it's become more pronounced where there's gaps and where there's real failings for certain communities in terms of not only access to technology, but the ability to use that technology to propel themselves out of certain situations, certain lifestyles, certain socioeconomic groups, and really seize the opportunities moving forward. So I think it's exciting to think about those communities around the world, wherever they are, whether it be groups in the US or students from historically Black universities in the USA versus refugees in Bangladesh. And we're really working across the full mix with the work we do with the Lenovo Foundation.
Excellent. Thank you all. So some of the things we learned in our research were around the factors that contributed to women's success as leaders in technology STEM. Some of those factors included things like early promotions were more critical for women in their career trajectory than men. Also, there was no ambition gap between men and women, which often when I mentor and coach women, they worry that things they do, like take a maternity leave, would suggest that they're not as ambitious as their men counterparts, whereas actually that's not true. And then other factors that were around relationships with mentors. And it was found that women keep in touch with mentors for a less long duration of time than men. And also, while men and women all considered switching jobs to be quite critical to continuing to work up a career trajectory, men switch more than women. And when women were asked, what are the factors you consider as to whether or not you take on a new promotion, several factors were stated, including their broad ecosystem, how it impacts their home, and beyond just those at work. Whereas for men, the number one factor was their individual confidence and excitement for the role. So those are just a few of the findings. I'm curious if each of you can relate to some of them or see a piece of it that really speaks to your career trajectory. And maybe we'll go in the opposite order today. So Charlotte, then the last question. So Charlotte, maybe you start on this one. Reflect on any one of the elements I spoke about relative to your career trajectory.
Yeah, so I think the phrase that probably sums up a lot of what you've just spoke to, Neveen, is imposter syndrome, which I think all of us have suffered from or still suffer from in varying degrees throughout our career. And unfortunately, I think all of us still see in other women that are coming through the ranks. And I think that's an almost impossible task to grapple with in this session today in terms of how we might fix it. But I think it's a real behaviour thing in women that we have to look at when girls are young to make them feel like they can do anything. I was speaking to one of my colleagues in the team the other day. I happened to go to a state school in the UK, it happened to be a convent school, and the nuns, rightly or wrongly, for anybody who's been in that education system, like bred a fierceness in us that we could achieve anything. Didn't matter what it was, we could achieve anything. We could follow our dreams and follow our paths. And bearing in mind that was in the 1980s when perhaps that wasn't, what girls did. I think you have to have those role models wherever they come from, however strange they seem, very early in your life to realize that you can do anything you want. But I think the imposter syndrome, I'm not a psychologist, but it's still there for everyone. And I even see it just even in the last few weeks where there was a great opportunity for somebody that I thought they should take, was convinced they would, but I think they ultimately doubted themselves in being able to do it. So I think that's still a real trait for all of us to grapple with.
Thank you. Atti, I'm wondering, in your work with girls, what have you seen be critical in terms of enabling their success, and what are some of the gaps you see and ideas to address them?
Sure. So I think, with girls we've worked with at Seed South Africa, and then even just currently with my new role and organizations that focus on working with girls and young women, it really is, the pressure is coming from multiple directions. There's societal pressure, there's familial pressure, there's also we all get conditioned differently and we absorb that conditioning. And as we're kind of in the journey of our own education or careers, we, could shift the way we approach the world based on kind of that conditioning. So I think for us, it's really ensuring that our girls know their rights, know what is possible for them and what is achievable, and really kind of instilling that in them. But it's also, we live in a world that instilling that can-do attitude is not enough, because oftentimes my personal experience was, which kind of relates to this, was I was raised by a family that also told me I can do whatever I wanted in this world, and kind of prepared me for a path to look at the world as something that I can explore and not be afraid of that. However, when I left high school and went to university and left home, I was kind of hit by the world that thinks of those things very differently. And I can only imagine how much of myself I would have adjusted if I didn't have that push from a young age that kind of helped me power through, because we need that, but also, society does not give us enough of those opportunities. Kind of what you mentioned earlier around, whether it's in tech or any other industry, when women are in a new role, they're nervous about kind of our own abilities. We often think men will take a job if they can do 30% of it. They're like, let's go, I can do this job. But we don't, we're always kind of holding ourselves back a little bit. And I think that is because of what we've absorbed from the way society kind of has boxed us in. And it's gonna be, I think, investing in girls at a young age, especially marginalized, to really ensure that they continue to believe in themselves, although they will go through times in life or at work or at school where someone does not believe in them. But we have to continue to do that. And definitely relationships with mentors has been critical for me as well. And really that long-term investment. And I think as women, we have to continue to kind of push ourselves even when it's hard, because we have to continue doing that. If not, the world is not just going to open up its doors and just, if that was the way, we would have been ushered in already. So it's going to be that constant investing in the next generation and mentoring younger people, or women, and bringing them up and creating, for those of us who have leadership abilities or opportunity, creating a work environment also that is conducive to young women and their dreams and their aspirations.
Absolutely. And Cecile, I wonder if you can speak to it, speak also to some of the factors and where you saw that they related to your career trajectory, and what do you think organizations can do as we look to increasing diversity of women in the leadership?
Yes, so first I would like to say that I found your study extremely insightful, and some of the results surprised me, to be honest. I did not expect all of them, yes. And one that was for me a surprise was really the one around what was the promotion that was the most important to you. And I remember women said it was the first or the second one, and men said it's a later one, so more like 4th, 5th, or even later. And on my personal experience is that it's more a 5th or 6th position that really made the difference and was a pivotal moment. And so I'm wondering why we have this gap. And I would tend to think that it's really when you have, I think it's more about 10, 15 years of experience, when you start having really a leading role, you have a large team, you can have really an impact on the company, on the society at large, that you can really show your full potential. And I think at a broader level than what you can do when you're more on the execution side. And I think we should not underestimate the importance of getting these intermediary managerial roles. And I believe if we have such a leakage, as you said rightly from the beginning, between people, women who come out of STEM schools and then women who make it to the top, I guess it's very much because we miss this intermediary step. And we need, as an organization, as organizations, as groups, really to force the promotion of women to this intermediary leadership positions who will see their potential. And then it will be easier or more natural, I would say, to promote them to top management roles. And for me, I think this is really a bias we need to change. I think it's something we can act upon, because as leaders in organizations, we can put quotas, we can really force managers casting, and we can create the difference over, let's say, 5 to 7 years.
Excellent. So in our last 9 minutes or so, I really want to pivot to the call to action. And some of the things that we found from the study were important actions to take was, one, to coach women to actually state their ambition out loud, and that your mentors and sponsors cannot be supportive of helping you to get to leadership if they don't understand that that's one of your goals, as an example. And I'd be curious as to what are some of the other calls to action that you would want to share with all the people listening today. Maybe actually we start with you, as we haven't started with you yet, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. I think I do agree with you that we have to, as women, state our ambition. but I also think that sometimes we need people to help us see that in ourselves, specifically in communities where, as women, we may be conditioned to be more demure and quieter and not show our strength or our intelligence or our ability. So I think as an call to action would be for leaders to look in their team. If they don't have women in their team, then make sure there are women in their team, because that's a big problem. And then if there are women in their team, whether it's a male or female leader, look into how can we support that young woman in our team to really get to understand where she's going, and kind of, it's not hand-holding, but it really is just giving that support as those who may be kind of, if we're trying to get people to be mid-level, we have to look at, those who are in senior level have to look at everybody else. And then also those who are in mid-level have to look at also who are in junior level, and kind of create some mechanism to support women. I've seen it in my own experience. At my last job, we have an incredible finance director woman who just happens to be a bit demure and somewhat shy in meetings, but she is an incredible finance person that it requires to get that out, to see that she is the person that needs to continue to be promoted. But if you really judge just by the way she's going to sit in a meeting, then you could have just said this person is not confident enough. But it really is just more, she needed that support. And I think we have a lot of those women around us, and that's an action for us to elevate them and to lift them up.
Excellent. And so maybe, Charlotte, we go to you next. So what would be an incremental call to action from what Atti and I have said around what we can encourage women and organizations to do to really act?
Yeah, so I think it's beholden on all of us to do things that are formal and do things that are informal, and drive change in the organizations that we work in, as well as in the industries that we're in, as well as in the functions that we're in. So I think you have to look at it at every level. So at a Lenovo level, in terms of my business as usual job, it's about how we can drive change in the work that we do that is more representative for everybody. I think we can look at top down and bottom up. So an organizational level, yes, setting goals is absolutely key. More importantly, it's holding those executives accountable for those goals and building them into their KPIs, which isn't always the case. It might just feel like a little bit of lip service at that level, and typically they will recruit in their own likeness, and we all know where that will end up for all of us. So I think that top-down approach is really key, but I also think it has to be bottom-up as well. So there has to be programs that are in place that nurture talent, either from minority universities or from minority groups, that bring people into the organization at that level, so we're filling the talent pool for the future. And I think, but I also think it has to be representative of the part of the world that you're in. So, for example, we're a global organization, so what works in Japan is not what will work in the US. So you can't set the same quota or target for female representation in leadership in those two markets, because it's incredibly different. Likewise, you can't set a minority representation goal in a market like Poland when it's a totally different landscape to the US. So I think it actually, it does have to be really thoughtful and local to the market that you're operating in. And I think the other thing is that I would like to see real action around is rethinking mentorship. We've talked about that, a lot. I'm sure it's been talked about in all of the other sessions. It's something that it's all front of mind. I'm sure every one of us on this call and beyond are mentors and mentees. But I think it's moving it from being mentorship to advocacy. So really advocating for people and, pinpointing a couple of people, like, Atti, you spoke about a couple of people where you can make a real difference to their future by advocating for them and helping them navigate those steps through the organization or the industry or outside of your organization into those leadership roles, and really supporting them every step of the way. And we can probably all point to people in our own careers that have helped us do that. But I think it is that can't be a program, because, it has to be natural, a natural progression and a natural relationship. So they're the things I'd focus on.
I love that. Not just mentorship, but advocating and sponsorship. I love that. Cecile, would love to hear a call to action from you and your perspective as well.
Yes. So I tend to, I concur fully with what Atti and Charlotte have said. I would say on my side, three things. The first one is definitely quotas. We've been discussing a lot about quotas, but I can just testify that when you do it and you implement it, it works. And I can say, for example, we have increased by 50% the ratio of women in our key IT role positions, or same thing, plus 50% in the percentage of women in succession roles. So that works, and that was over 2 years. So it's extremely, it makes really a difference, and that's sad to say, but this has to be done from the top down to the ground, because to the very early frontline positions, because very often, sometimes the programs can tend to be very much focused on, board members, or at least senior management members, but then what about the people in the pyramid? And that's really where everything happens. So that would be my first call for action, and I think I will stick to that. The second one is a question of trust, respect for women. I think in organization, or maybe that's also my personal, sometimes there is a lack of respect for women. And I'm sorry to say that, but I think it still happens too often. And it's about man-interrupting. It's about not really listening to what a woman would say and listening to what the man would say. It's exactly the same thing, but differently. It's about the behavior. It's about being, a lot of things like. And this is about inclusivity. And for me, this is absolutely critical, because you cannot help women progress if you do not install behavior, a respectful behavior within your organization, and a behavior where women are considered just as equal as men. And I think as managers, we have a role to play to make sure that this is completely understood and by all the people in the organization. And my third call to action is role models. I think, and that has been true for me also. It's not always easy when you, from your personal background, you don't have examples, or you're not necessarily brought up to, you don't know exactly what it would be to be a female leader, and you have no, and so role models are very inspiring, and they also show you the possibility of, well, this is feasible, someone has been doing it, this is how we do, maybe I can take example I can learn from this person, I can understand how she's doing it, how she is managing. And I think this is very important, because it shows you that it is possible, and it's nothing unachievable, I would say. So that would be my two call for actions, my three call for action, sorry.
I love all these calls for action. I think they're fantastic. And as we close, I guess I would summarize all the points I heard, which is make your ambition known, establish a group of mentors and sponsors and advocates around you, and also leverage them to make your ambition known. Identify people that will also create an environment around you respectful, that's enabling of your ideas, and also put your arms around as leaders, up and coming women that you can put your arms around and help them enable their ideas. Talk across different people and different opportunities. Look at what's out there. Keep your eyes open, and don't be afraid to put yourself into a situation that stretches you, because that's what promotion is. So, thank you to all the esteemed panelists. I loved hearing everyone's perspective, and thank you to the women's sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Neveen.